what you saw when you came in here yesterday morning.
By the way, has anything been moved? Or are things just as you left them yesterday?
Things are just the same. When it dropped below zero last night, I sent Frank out to start a fire for us this morning, but I told him not to touch anything except the stove. And you know Frank.
Somebody should have been left here yesterday.
Oh, yesterday, when I had to send Frank to Morris Center for that man who went crazy. I wanted to know I had my hands full yesterday. I knew you would be back from Omaha by today, and as long as I went over everything by myself...
Well, Mr. Hale, tell now just what happened when you got here yesterday morning.
Harry and I had started the town with a load of potatoes. We came along the road from my place, and as I got here, I said, I'm going to see if I can get John Wright to go in with me on a party telephone. I spoke to Wright about it once before, and he put me off, saying folks talk too much anyway, and all he asked was peace and quiet. I guess you know about how much he talks himself, but I thought maybe if I went to the house and talked about it before his wife. Though I said to Harry that I didn't know what his wife wanted made much difference to John.
Let's talk about that later, Mr. Hale. Tell now just what happened when you got to the house.
I didn't hear or see anything. I knocked at the door and still was all quiet inside. I knew they must be up. It was past 8 o'clock. So I knocked again and I thought I heard somebody say, come in. I wasn't sure, I'm not sure yet, but I opened the door, this door, and there in that rocker sat Mrs. Wright.
What was she doing?
She was rocking back and forth. She had her apron in her hand, was kind of plaiting at it.
And how did she look?
Well, she looked queer.
How do you mean queer?
Well, as if she didn't know what she was going to do next, and kind of done up.
And how did she seem to feel about your coming?
Well, I don't think she minded one way or other. She didn't pay much attention. I said, how do, Mrs. Wright? It's cold, ain't it? And she said, is it? And went on pleading at the apron. Well, I was surprised. She didn't ask me to come up to the stove or sit down. Just sat there, not even looking at me. So I said, I want to see John. And then she laughed. I guess you would call it a laugh. I thought of Harry and the team outside, so I said a little sharp, can I see John? No, says she, kind of dull-like. Ain't he home? Says I. Yes, she says, he's home. Then why can't I see him? I asked her out of patience. Because he's dead, she said. Dead, said I. She just nodded her head, not getting a bit excited, just rocking back and forth. Why, where is he? Says I, not knowing what to say. She just pointed upstairs, like that. I went up, I got up with the idea of going up there. I went from there to here. Then I says, why, what did he die of? He died of a rope around his neck, she says, and went on cleaning at the apron. Well, I went outside and called Harry. I thought I might need help. We went upstairs and there he was lying.
I think I'd rather have you go into that upstairs where you can point it all out. Just go on now with the rest of the story.
Well, my first thought was to get that rope off. It looked... But Harry, he went up to him. He said, now he's dead all right and we better not touch anything. So we went back downstairs. She was still sitting that same way. Has anybody been notified? I asked. No, said she, unconcerned. Who did this, Mrs. Wright? Said Harry. He said it businesslike, and she stopped pleating her apron. I don't know, she says. You don't know, says Harry. No, she says. Why, weren't you sleeping in the bed with him? Said Harry. Yes, she says, but I was on the inside. Somebody slipped a rope around his neck and strangled him. And you didn't wake up, says Harry. I didn't wake up, she said after her. We must have looked as if we didn't know how that could be, for after a minute she said, I sleep sound. Harry was going to ask her more questions, but I said, maybe we ought to let her tell her story first to the coroner or the sheriff. So we went outside and Harry went fast as he could to River's place, But there's her telephone.
And what did Miss Wright do when she knew you'd gone for the coroner?
She moved from that chair to this one over there. She had her hands held together and was looking down. I thought I ought to make some conversation, so I said I had come in to see if John wanted to put in the telephone. And then she started to laugh, and then she looked at me, scared. I don't know, maybe it wasn't scared. I would like to say it was. Soon Harry got back, then Dr. Lloyd came and you, Mr. Peters. And so I guess that's all I know that you don't.
All right. Well, I guess we'll go upstairs first and then out to the barn and around there. And you're convinced that there was nothing important here? Nothing that would point to any motive?
Nothing here but kitchen things.
Excuse me. Well, here's a nice mess.
Oh, her fruit. It did freeze. She was always afraid of that when it got so cold. She was scared the fire would go out and her jars would break.
Can you believe that? Held for murder and worrying about her preserves, ain't she?
Well, I guess before we're through, she may have something more serious to worry about than her preserves.
Well, women are used to worrying over trifles.
And yet, for all their worries, what would we do without the ladies? Dirty towels? Not much of a housekeeper, would you say, ladies?
There's a great deal of work to be done on the farm.
Oh, to be sure. And yet I know some Dixon County farmhouses which do not have such towels.
Those towels get dirty awful quick, and men's hands aren't always as clean as they might be.
Ah, loyal to your sex, I see. But you and Miss Wright were neighbors. I suppose you're friends, too?
I've not seen much of her of late years. I've not been in this house. It's been more than a year.
And why was that? You didn't like her?
I liked her all well enough. Farmers' wives have their hands full, Mr. Henderson. And then,
Yes?
it never seemed a very cheerful place.
No, it's not cheerful. I shouldn't say she had the homemaking instinct.
Well, I don't know as Wright had either.
What, you mean they didn't get on very well?
No, I don't mean anything. But I don't think the place could be any cheerfuler for John Wright's being in it.
Well, I would like to talk of that a little later, Mrs. Hale. I want to get the lay of things upstairs now.
Well, I suppose anything Miss Peters does will be alright. She wants to take in some clothes for her, some stuff, little things. We left in such a hurry yesterday.
Yes, but I would like to see what you take, Mrs. Peters, and keep an eye out for anything that might be important.
Yes, Mr. Henderson. I'd hate to have men coming into my kitchen, snooping around and criticizing. Of course, it's no more than their duty. Duty's all right, but I guess that deputy sheriff that came out to make the fire might have got a little of this on. Wish I'd thought of that sooner. Seems mean to talk about her for not having her things slicked up when she had to come away in such a hurry. She had bread set. She was going to put this. It's a shame about her fruit. I wonder if it's all gone. I think there's some here that's all right, Mrs. Peters. Yes, here. This is cherries, too. I declare I believe it's the only one. She'll feel awful bad after all the hard work and the hot weather. I remember the afternoon I put up my cherries last summer. Well, I must get these things from the front room closet. Are you coming with me, Mrs. Hale? You could help me carry them. My, it's cold in there. Wright was close. I think maybe that's why she kept so much to herself. She didn't even belong to the ladies' aid. I suppose she felt she couldn't do her part, and then you don't enjoy things when you feel shabby. She used to wear pretty clothes and be lively, back when she was Minnie Foster, one of the town girls singing in the choir. But that was 30 years ago. Is this all you was to take in?
Oh, she said she wanted an apron. Funny thing to want, but there isn't much to get you dirty in jail. I suppose it's to make her feel more natural. They said there was on the cupboard over here. Oh yeah. Here they are. And then a little shawl that's always hung at the back door. Here it is.
Mrs. Peters,
Yes, Mrs. Hale?
do you think she did it?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, I don't think she did. Asking for an apron and a little shawl. Worrying about her fruit.
Mr. Peters says it looks bad for her. Mr. Henderson's always awful sarcastic in his speech, and he'll make fun of her for saying she didn't wake up.
Well, I guess John Wright didn't wake when they were slipping that rope under his neck.
No, it's strange. It must have been an awful crafty and still. They say it's such a funny way to kill a man, rigging it all up like that.
That's just what Mr. Hale said. There was a gun in this house. He says that's what he can't understand.
Mr. Henderson said coming out that what was needed for the case was a motive. Something to show clear signs of anger or sudden feeling.
Well, I don't see any signs of anger around here. It's wiped to here. I wonder how they are finding things upstairs. I hope she added a little more red up there. You know, it seems kind of sneaking. Locking her up in town and then coming out here trying to get her own house to turn against her.
But Mrs. Hale, the law is the law.
I suppose it is. Better loosen up your things. You won't feel them when you go out.
Oh, she was piecing a quilt.
Oh, it's log cabin pattern. Pretty, isn't it? I wonder if she was gonna quilt it or just nodded.
Can you believe the women? They wonder whether she was going to quilt it or just nodded.
Well, Frank's fire didn't do much up there, did it? Now, let's go out to the barn and get that cleared up.
I don't know, is there anything so strange? Our taking up our time with little things while we're waiting for them to get the evidence. I don't see as it's anything to laugh about.
Of course, they've got awful important things on their minds.
Mrs. Peters, look at this. Here, this is the one she was working on. And look at the sewing. All the rest of it has been so nice and even. And look at this. It's all over the place. Why, it looks as if she didn't know what she was about.
Mrs. Hale, what are you doing?
Just pulling out a stitch or two that's not so very good. Bad sewing always made me fidgety.
I don't think we ought to touch things.
I'll just finish up this end. Mrs. Peters,
Yes, Mrs. Hale?
what do you suppose she was so nervous about?
Oh, I don't know if she was nervous. I sometimes sew awful queer when I'm just tired. Well, I must get these things wrapped up. They may be through sooner than we think. I wonder just where I can find a piece of paper and string.
In that cupboard, maybe?
Right. Here's a bird cage. Did you have a bird, Mrs. Hale?
Why, I don't know whether she did or not. I've not been here for so long. There was a man around last year selling canaries cheap, but I don't know if she took one. Maybe she did. She used to sing real pretty herself.
Seems strange to think of a bird around here. But she must have had one, or why else would there be a cage? I wonder what happened to it.
I suppose maybe the cat bought it.
No, she didn't have a cat. She has that funny feeling some people have about cats, being afraid of them. My cat got in a room and she got real upset and asked me to take it out.
My sister Bessie was like that. Queer, ain't it?
Why, look at this, the door's broke. The hinges all pulled apart.
Looks as if someone must have been rough with it.
Right, yes.
I wish if they're going to find any evidence, they'd be about it. I don't like this place.
No, but I'm awful glad you came with me, Mrs. Hale. It'd be lonesome for me to sit here all by myself.
It would, wouldn't it? But I tell you what I do wish, Mrs. Peters. I wish I'd come over here sometimes when she was here. I wish I had.
But of course you were awful busy, Mrs. Hale, with your house and your children.
I could have come. I stayed away because it weren't cheerful. And that's why I ought to have come. I never liked this place. Maybe because it's down in a hollow and you don't see the road. I don't know what it is, but it's a lonesome place. It always was. Oh, I wish I'd come over to see Minnie Foster sometimes. I can see now.
Mrs. Hale, you mustn't reproach yourself. Somehow we just don't see how it is with other folks until something comes up.
Not having children makes less work, but it makes a quiet house. And Wright out to work all day and no company when he did come in. Did you know John Wright, Mrs. Peters?
Not to know him. I've seen him around town. They say he was a good man.
Yes, good. He didn't drink, and he kept his word as well as many, I guess, and he paid his debts. But he was a hard man, Mrs. Peters, just to pass the time of day with him. Like a raw wind that gets to the bone. I should think she would have wanted a bird. But what do you suppose went with it?
I don't know, unless it got sick and died.
You weren't raised around here, were you? You didn't know her?
Not till I brought her yesterday.
Come to think of it, she was kind of like a bird herself. Real sweet and pretty, but kind of timid and fluttery. How she did change. Tell you what, Mrs. Peters, why don't you take the quilt in with you? It might take up her mind.
Right, I think that's a real nice idea, Mrs. Hale. There couldn't possibly be any objection to that, could there? I wonder, just what else would I take in? I wonder if her patches are all in here? And things?
Here's some red. I expect this has got sewing things in it. What a pretty box. Looks like something somebody would give you. Maybe her scissors aren't here. Why, there's something wrapped up in this piece of silk.
Why, this isn't her scissors.
Oh, Mrs. Peters,
It's the bird?
but look at this! Mrs. Peters, its neck! Look at its neck! It's all other side too!
Somebody wrung its neck?
Well, ladies, have you decided whether she was going to quilt it or knot it?
We think she was going to knot it.
Well, that's interesting, I'm sure. Has the bird flown?
We think the cat got it.
Is there a cat?
Well, not now. They're superstitious, you know. They leave.
Well, no sign of anyone having come in from the outside. Their own rope. Now let's go up again and go over it piece by piece. Must have been someone who knew just what to do.
She liked the bird. She was going to bury it in that pretty box.
When I was a girl, I had a kitten, and there was a boy, he took a hatchet, and then right before my eyes, and before I could get there, if they hadn't held me back, I might have hurt him.
I wonder how it would seem never to have had any children around. No, Wright wouldn't like the bird. A thing that sang. She used to sing. He killed that too.
We don't know who killed the bird.
I knew John Wright.
It was an awful thing that was done in this house that night, Mrs. Hale. Killing a man, slipping a rope around his neck while he slept, that choked the life out of him.
His neck. Choked the life out of him.
We don't know who killed him. We don't know.
If there'd been years and years of nothing, then a bird to sing to you, it would be awful still after the bird was still.
I know what stillness is. When we homesteaded in Dakota, and my first child died after he was only 3 years old, and me with no other than...
How soon do you suppose they'd be through, looking for the evidence?
I know what stillness is. The law has got to punish crime, Mrs. Hale.
I wish you'd seen Minnie Foster when she wore a white dress with blue ribbons and stood up there in the choir and sang. Oh, I wish I'd come over here once in a while. That was a crime. That was a crime. Who's going to punish that?
We mustn't take on.
I might have known she needed help. I know how things can be. For women. I tell you together and we live far apart. We all go through the same things. It's just a different kind of the same thing. If I was you, I wouldn't tell her her fruit was gone. Tell her it ain't. Tell her it's alright. Take this in to prove it to her. She may never know whether it was broke or not.
My, it's a good thing the man couldn't hear us, getting all stirred up over a small thing like a dead canary. As if that could have anything to do with. Wouldn't they just laugh?
Maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't.
No, Peters, it's all perfectly clear, except for a reason for doing it. Oh, well, what do you know, George, when it comes to women? There was some definite thing, you know, something to show, something to make a story about, a thing that would connect up with this strange way of doing it.
Well, you want to see anything Mrs. Peters is going to take in?
Well,
Mr. Hale.
Well, I got the team around. Very cold up there.
well, I'm going to say it well by myself. You can send Frank out for me, can't you? I want to go over everything. I'm not satisfied that we can't do better.
Well, are you going to take in this stuff now or what?
Pardon my French. No, I guess they're not very dangerous things the ladies have picked up. No, Mrs. Peters does need supervising. As a matter of fact, the sheriff's wife is married to the law. Ever think of it that way, Mrs. Peters?
Not just that way.
Married to the law.
Good one. Thanks.
Still, Mr. Henderson, before we start getting it all wrapped up, would you like to accompany me into this cupboard again? We ought to take a look at these windows. Windows. We'll be right out, Mr. Hale.
Well, Henry, at least we found out she wasn't going to quilt it. She was gonna, what is it you call that, ladies?
We call it knotted, Mr. Henderson.